Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at BellyUpSports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
I know we put them in the Power Five because they have a certain team in their but yeah, Ligue 1. I mean maybe someone makes an argument for the Portuguese league, and it's not going to be a very strong argument. But I mean they have probably more names, Benfica, Porto, and Sporting versus Ligue 1's PSG, and there's only one reason and one reason only that we talk about PSG is because of the money. And but yeah, I would probably still rather say that the Ligue 1 is better than the Portuguese league, even though I enjoy the Portuguese league. I think it's a fun league to watch. Whenever you see those big three go against each other, it's very entertaining football. And the same thing for Eredivisie. I think it's very entertaining football, especially when you get to see the names before they become names, because they're stepping stone leagues. And I mean, you could say probably the same thing for Ligue 1. I mean, everyone calls it a farmers league for a reason, but um, I don't know. I think also my logic is like sometimes they grab those players from the Eredivisie, from the Portuguese league, from the Belgium league, those leagues. So, say what you want, but Ligue 1's grabbing your players too.
Yeah, no, Ligue 1 it's the league to me. There's stepping stone leagues, which you just said. I do think Portugal still falls in that category. The Netherlands, those leagues do qualify in that. But then there's Ligue 1, who's like not necessarily the top tier, but if you go to Ligue 1, you're getting paid well in every facet of the game. So, and obviously right now, I think you're right. There's not bigger teams in France, but historically, there are bigger teams in France like Marseille, Lyon, Monaco, Lille. Well, Lille's really a relatively new team. You obviously mentioned PSG, but then going down the list, there's like Montpellier and FC Nantes, who Americans should know very well if you watch any soccer for between 2010 and 2018. You should know that team very well because they brought in many Americans to play there. So, yeah, there's teams there that are historically meaningful, but not currently, and it's sometimes disappointing to watch this league. I got to be honest.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. But we'll start things off with the teams that are in the relegation zone. And 18th place, we got Montpellier, which Kelcey mentioned. It's a staple at one point in Ligue 1. I mean, Olivier Giroud came from that team, and it's been rough for Montpellier. I'm not gonna deny it for them. They haven't necessarily been that team, and I think it just goes back to I do feel in some sense PSG has ruined the league for some of these teams because of them essentially pulling a Bayern Munich and pulling guys from across this league to build their team, and I obviously that. But that's the sad reality, and I think Montpellier, you're just discovering their flaws as well. But I mean, on the flip side, we saw what happened with Bordeaux, where they just lost everything, and now they're not even a professional club anymore. They're an amateur pro-am club. So and they're currently in the fifth division. And I hope we don't see that for Montpellier. I think, especially it's the same for Bordeaux, a team that has had success in Ligue 1. I mean, Zinedine Zidane, wore that kit at one point in his career. I'm sure that was painful for him to see. But yeah,
fun fact: Zidane and Ronaldinho played against each other in the French in Ligue 1 when they were both there. Obviously, with Ronaldinho playing for PSG
before it was cool.
Yeah, before it was cool. Back when they had gray and blue as their colors.
Oh, what a time! But yeah, Montpellier, 18th place with 9 points right now. Yeah, not where you want to be. Can you improve on it? Probably not. I mean,
no.
it's not. It's gonna be a daunting task for Montpellier. And then 17th place with 12 points is Le Havre SC. Um, didn't expect much from them, to be honest, man. They're not. It's one of those teams that I think they did get promoted this year, and I mean, it's just what happens with those kind of teams. They come up and go right back down. It is what it is, kind of thing. Now, 16th. Now, if you guys aren't familiar, Ligue 1 just completely changed their league format. They moved away from the 20-team league format to now having 18 teams, and that 16th place spot now has a play-in. So, essentially, if you guys are trying to figure out what that play-in means, at Saint Etienne, who currently is in that 16th place with 13 points, um, at the end of the season, they will play a knockoff game, a one. I think it's actually a two-leg
Mm-hmm.
a two-leg match against the third place team in League Two. The winner plays in Ligue 1. So Saint Etienne essentially has still a shot to stay in Ligue 1, but I'm sure they're gonna want to get out of that position so they don't have to worry about even thinking about having to stay afloat. And if you're Le Havre, you're trying to get in that spot because at least you have a fighting chance to stay in Ligue 1. But when you look at the teams that are up in the relegation zone, do you see any turnarounds? Do you see anything that could be done for these teams to either get out of the relegation zone or get that 16th place spot?
Yeah, I don't know if I see a lot of turnaround opportunity. I do see a falling opportunity in there, and it's FC Nantes. I mentioned them as being historically good, but they're only 2 points out of relegation right now, sitting at 14th. It's not great looking, to say the least. It's tough. Obviously, Saint Etienne minus 22 in goal differential. They have the second worst behind Montpellier, but Le Havre has an opportunity to kind of jump them. Angers might fall, might stay up, but Nantes they're just not scoring enough goals in my eyes. I look at that team and it's not been good from goal scoring situation. And I don't know if they have enough to keep out of the relegation zone. Like they really have to hope that everybody below them just continues to just be awful. And that's, I hate to say it that way, but that's just how it's kind of going right now, where it is almost whoever can just win 2 games in the remaining. You have 6 points. You will feel pretty good about getting out of the relegation zone. It's just, which seems crazy to think. We have 13 matches, 14 matches left in the season, and I'm talking about one of these teams winning 2 games and feeling good out of the relegation zone. It's just kind of crazy how it works out that way. But yeah, it's tough. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether I see a major turnaround though across the board. I mean, Le Havre, you think they have an opportunity to get out of the zone, the relegation zone, just based on goal differential. Just hope some of the balls fall the other way. But yeah, everybody else there, it seems like they're kind of stuck. But I do look at Nantes as a team that might fall, and it might not be good.
Yeah, no, I think especially in that the I guess the beauty, or some cases maybe not the beauty of that second half of the season. Obviously, you go through the gauntlet once again, play every team, and you hope that you can make some adjustments from the previous one. And I think yeah, not this. I mean, the if you guys don't know, Ligue 1 does have a lot of goal scoring in it. Um, Maybe it's because it's probably a lot more heavier on one side than it is on the other side when it comes to it. But yeah, I think for teams like Saint Etienne and Le Havre, of what they can adjust to get better results in the second half. And you mentioned Nantes, you mentioned Angers. Those are teams that are not outside of the realm of possibility that maybe in that second half get into a rut of form. Maybe Saint Etienne could get the advantage by winning in one of those two. Maybe those are the 2 wins that they need, is to get off of Nantes and
Yeah.
Angers, and because the common phrase of all time, this is a 6-pointer opportunity, but for them that's really what it is. I mean, I think it goes down to that for them. But I feel like we'll see some shakeup. I think Nantes is a good shout. I think that they're probably playing a little bit better than what their record shows, which I mean it's not a really good record, but still,
Yeah.
I think they're playing not as good as people think they are. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see them in the relegation zone.
Yeah, for sure. And as long as it's not Brest, I don't need Brest to fall for no other reason than the comedy that is the Champions League show when
When
Brest comes up.
It's hilarious that a team that's maybe in that not heavily in that conversation, but could be a name to drop, but it's just a team that's in the Champions League.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is like, oh, they might get relegated, kind of. And it's not to their fault. They had a spectacular season last year, you know, but
yeah,
unfortunately, and it's a wise old tale that we've seen time and time again when teams like that probably have no business being on the top part of the table, they get poached. And that's unfortunate for them. But yes, and of course, seeing Michael Richards struggling to not say anything about Brest.
oh yeah,
And yeah, Thierry Henry, that's an all-time clip, by the way, the whole Brest thing. I like their shape.
yeah.
You don't have to
They
be
play they
big.
play off each other real well. Yeah,
I would love to see them get exposed.
yeah. Easily best moment in Champions League pre-game broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's a interesting group. I think it's hilarious. The whole Thierry Henry simping over Kate
Yeah.
Smith. Is
Did
it
you get it
Kate
right
Smith?
this time?
I have no Kate Scott. It's Kate Scott. It's
Kate
Kate Scott.
Scott.
She should have kept Abdo. But Kate Scott. There we go. I was about to go with another generic S name again. I think it was the same one I'm mistaking her for. Um, I don't learn. I don't learn. That's one thing you need to learn from this podcast. I never learn. I make stupid jersey bets, okay? Um, which I'm surprised so far that I have not made a bet. Because usually this is the episode where my
I'm
dumbass.
I'm I'm waiting for it. Honestly, this episode. That's what I can't lie. I'm waiting for this episode.
Oh man, I'm really hoping I don't. Um, but all right. European competitions will throw in the Europa Conference League spot, which is sixth place, and that is Nice with 24 points. Um, and then right above them in the Europa League spot is fifth place Olympic Lyon with 25 points. And I think I'll mention it just because even though technically this is a Champions League spot, but it's actually a Champions League play-in opportunity, which is the fourth place spot, and that's Lille with 27 points. Obviously, depending on how they do in Champions League qualifying, Lille could easily be in the Europa League, depending on how they perform. Um, but yeah, those teams that I mentioned right now, Kelcey, do you see any of them slipping off or maybe improving their position? There's obviously one team with a very interesting scenario on their hands where they're on the top side of the table, but if they don't handle their finances, and I'm talking about Olympic Lyon, um, if they don't fix their budget, they're getting sent down to League Two.
Yeah, I mean that's the big one, right? That's the obvious option. I think the one that's sitting on the outside looking in right now at these positions though is Lens. And I think Lens is an opportunity to slide in where potentially Leon falls out. I just with the way this league is going this year, if you're not scoring a bunch of goals, I'm concerned. It's kind of how this is working out. And Leona should have firepower, but that sometimes they just go blank and they just cannot put it together. And so that's a situation where I see a chance where Lenses can get in there. I'm not thinking they get into a play-in spot, but given their I guess hot start to the season, you can look at it as a team that might surprise somebody. And I think Lille, I feel comfortable keeping them in a Europa League minimum. Like it doesn't change for me. Nice, I think, can work itself up, but I don't think there's too much shakeup there. I do worry about Lyon though, for no other reason than they could do everything right and just not take care of their finances and be gone. It's just there's so much
And
hanging over their
and
head.
if they do take care of the finances, you're talking about a fire sale.
Yeah,
Like what they have to do to get back in the black, if you will, is they're gonna have to sell a lot of players, a lot of top prospects. You're talking about Chetkiel, probably a name that we're finally going to see leave Leon. Amongst other, they just got Tanner Tessman. I mean, do they try to get what they can for Tanner Tessman? Um, it's an interesting scenario for them because like you need to sell your players, but at the same time, you need to keep enough players to be competitive. Because obviously, and I mean, Leon, well known for their academy. I mean, most of the big names that you hear, Tolisso, Lacazette, and all that, that's homegrown players that they developed. And so Karim Benzema, probably,
yep.
I guess in recency, that's like their biggest name to come out of there. But
And let's not forget, this is fallout from the Lacazette purchase that they didn't spend the money immediately. They spent the money a season and a half later, and so now you have that season gap of finances. So now the FFP comes in, and it's like, oh well, you that big money in has been taken away, so now you have big money out 2 seasons later. And that's how financials come into play here. It's completely messing them up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's completely and utterly insane, the situation there for Leon. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Leon's it's gonna suck if that team improves their position on the table, and then because they just couldn't get their finances figured out, someone's getting moved up to either Europa League or a Champions League spot, or maybe the Conference League, depending on how they performed. Um, and Leon is just gonna have to sit. Or would it also be hilarious if UEFA's just like, yeah, they could be in the competition while wearing the League Two badge, the patches on their jerseys.
I mean, wouldn't be the first time we saw something weird like that.
That's true. That's very true. Now the
Look at
teams,
you, Juventus.
yeah. Now the guaranteed Champions League teams, we got AS Monaco with 30 points, Olympique Marseille with 30 points as well. Props to Roberto De Zerbi, even though I think he tried to quit at some point during this run. Um, that was interesting. Yeah. When you look at these two teams that are guaranteed in the Champions League, do you see any of them maybe slip up? I mean, obviously Martial kind of running it a little bit hot. You know, Mason Greenwood kind of having quite the moments right now over there in Martial. Even now, all of a sudden, he's backing away from Jamaica because now he's trying to say, "I think England needs to call me up again."
Yeah, I don't know if either falls off. I do think both compete heavily. I specifically look at the opportunity that Paul Pogba is coming back, and one of those main teams linked to him is Marseille. And if they have a say in this, and they can bring Pogba to Marseille, him with Diego Payet, along with the rest of that attacking players, Marseille is a hard team to just say no, they're going to fall off at that point. It's supposed to be interesting to see what if they make any moves in January that can set them kind of over. But yeah, Paul Pogba is the one I'm kind of highlighting as far as a potential coming into the French league and potentially changing the entire landscape here, and not for a bad thing, just like in a positive way. And we'll have to see though. But if he does land somewhere in France, it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Now, yeah, I do agree with that. And the front runner to win Ligue 1, obviously, we haven't mentioned this team yet, and of course, it's Paris Saint-Germain with 37 points. Also, should probably point out they're undefeated, have yet to have a loss on the loss column. 11 wins, 4 draws. Probably the most uneventful undefeated team that because let's be honest, when Bayer Leverkusen was undefeated, everyone's like, holy shit, this team's still undefeated when we were at the halfway point. No one's saying that for PSG right now. Is there a difference in that because is it because it's PSG or is it
No,
because
it's
it's
because they
League On and
lost three
nobody
times
cares?
in Champions League.
Yeah,
That's what makes this team. That's what makes this team different from Leverkusen. Is Leverkusen was undefeated across all competitions,
except one,
and
except one match.
except for the very end. Except for the very end. Right now, PSG sucks in Champions League. That's just like how it is. Looking at that table, I mean, they're 25th out of teams potentially moving forward in Champions League. Like that's just not good enough if you are PSG with all this extra money to spend, and you can dominate the French league, but you can do that with your academy players. Your academy players make up the next tier of the French national team. And so if you can't, if you're not winning Champions League matches as PSG, you are failing in the season. I always think of the Zlatan commentary that PSG is too good for France. That may be the case. Maybe that team is too good for the French league. The problem is they're not good enough for the other leagues because they tend to rest on their laurels in this situation. And while they are dominant in the French league, this isn't the first time we've seen a PSG team go 11-4, 11 wins, 4 draws, or 12 wins, 3 draws up into the midway point. They might win this league by 20 points, but the difference is they might crash out before the knockout stage in the Champions League. And you can't have that if you're PSG. And so while the league side of things, it's always goes smooth sailing for the most part, it's everything else that makes PSG not as attractive for like international recognition today, other than the fact they have money. Everybody knows they have money, and that's what attracts them. That's what attracts players to them. It's much like going overseas, going to the Middle East. Anytime there's a big money splash, it's like, oh, well, it's probably PSG. But what does that do for a player? We just saw Neymar crash out basically after going to PSG. Messi went there for a stop before he went to Inter Miami, and he spent more time at Inter Miami playing than he did at PSG already. So, PSG is kind of a stopover for stars nowadays. It's not like it once was, where you had the Ronaldinhos of the world in their prime playing for you before moving on to Barcelona. These guys are coming at the end of their career. So, yeah, PSG, while they are good in the league, never going to take that away from them. For them, it's easy to be good in the league. You have to try harder to suck in the French league if you're PSG than you have to try harder to win games, it feels like. So, yeah, I think that's the big difference here. It's just a completely like apples to oranges type of comparison to what we saw with Leverkusen, where Leverkusen is not a big dog. That would be like Nice going undefeated in this in Ligue 1. Then we could have that conversation like, oh, this is impressive. But like, it's PSG. It's expected.
I think that's exactly why, and I agree wholeheartedly. Teams to note, I mean, the one that I was going to mention, I already brought it up, is Olympic Lyon's situation where if they don't get their finances handled, they're going to get relegated. And all that they're doing right now, which obviously we just mentioned, it's an Europa League position that they're currently in and potentially could improve on it. It will all be for naught, especially if UEFA decides like we can't have a second division team in our tournament. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility. So I think Olympic Lyon, that's going to be especially going into January. Once we're in the January transfer window, like who's getting bought out of Olympic Lyon, because there is a lot of players that did eventually come back to Olympic Lyon. Obviously Lacazette is one of the names that everyone thinks of, and then Tolisso, another name that did return to Olympic Lyon. What does this team do to fix their finances, but at the same time keep a competitive team out there to get a good position to see some more up? Because I mean, the irony of all this, they get money if they're in the Champions League, but then they're out of it if they don't get into. It's a very catch-22.
Yeah, and it ruins some teams, right? When you become so reliant on you have to be in the Champions League spots and then you miss it a year. We've seen it. Everton was a perfect example of that for so many years. They were in that 5th place, 6th place team. They were making Europa Leagues. They were making Champions League play-ins. And then all of a sudden they missed it one year. And now look at where we see Everton. I mean, it is a downhill slope. It's not the first team, but it won't be the last either. To see somebody like Lyon, who is a big team, who becomes reliant on that extra money, and then they crash out. And let's not forget, Lyon was one of those teams that was projected to be part of that Super League originally. They did get rejected, and then when the third alternative proposal came out, they were included again because of the namesake. But it's like, yeah, there's a reason they were trying to do a part of that stuff, and it's because of the money that could come in. So it's tough that Lyon is there, but yeah, I mean, it got to be better. You got to have better ownership if you want to succeed in today's modern football.
Which they are also owned by an American. So
I said what I said.
Yeah, not. I mean, unless your name is Todd Bowley right now, you're not. It's not a great time to be an American owner. Which I don't. I think Chelsea. Well,
I mean, Fenway Sports Group isn't doing too bad.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I'm sure. Congratulations, by the way, of being on top of the league for right now.
It's okay. It's my proudest moment of 2024.
But what's your any teams of note for you for Ligue 1?
I'm interested to see what Rhyme and Ren do. That sounds so silly, but they're both at a 0 goal difference. and they're 10th and 12th in the league. So dead center in the league. You're scoring 20 goals a game, or 20 goals so far in the season. You have more goals scored than the 7th place team, and yet they're both sitting middling in the table. I'm interested to see if they can figure it out and get some wins instead of draws, or if they plummet. I mean, we see it every year. There's a team right there in the middle part of the table who maybe loses out on a couple games here and there, and then all of a sudden they shoot up in the second half, and you see it the other way. They're in the middle of the table and they just fall off. And so those two teams I look at as potential to go either way, and I'm intrigued to see which way they go. That's really what it is.
Yeah, I think that Rennes and Reims, I think, is going to be also two teams that I feel like do fairly well to like stay at least in that top half of the
Yeah.
table. So I am also intrigued by that for them. Um, yeah, as far as any like huge shakeups, I don't really see it. I think Ligue 1 has been pretty straightforward every single year. I mean, yeah, Lille had that one very hilarious magical run that they did, which I always like to look at that the champions of League One, and there's just Lille right there in the middle that ruined the
Led
streak
by
for
an
PSG,
American and a Canadian. Go
led by an
figure.
American and a Canadian.
Go figure. That's what it took for a team to upset PSG.
Especially not only that American also used to play for PSG, so
Yep.
another wrinkle to that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ligue 1, I think it's a good league. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it's a terrible league, but if you want to be that soccer hipster that is gonna be like, I knew that guy before anybody else knew. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was all excited that Lacazette was like a little well kept secret for me for such a long time, and then because I was like, I know this guy's a baller. Clearly, that didn't pan out how I thought it was gonna pan out, but at
Yeah.
least I could, when everyone's like, "Who's this Alexander Lacazette guy?" I was like, "I'm glad you asked." So,
It's so true though. There's always one or two players, those darlings that sneak through in a league, and I think they always sneak through the French league is the one that I see the most. Where despite it being what you said, a Power Five or a Big Five or whatever we want to call them, league, it seems like they have outside of PSG, they always have the most unknowns attached to them. There's a lot of players that come through it, and you're like, I don't know how they're going to do. I've never seen anything about them, and the next thing you know, they're potentially a superstar or they're a flame out real quick and in a hurry.
I
It
mean,
goes both ways.
essentially that was Kamavinga, and so
Yeah. Yeah. So you just never know. I mean, really, you just never know with the French league. But it's funny because obviously, despite PSG being the top dog, they really suck at turning out players that are from their academy. Like they have good academy products. They just don't stay at their academy because they just end up buying people and sending those academy kids elsewhere.
yeah, man, you guys really messed up with Musa. I just want to point that out. Um, you know, legend of the game, and you guys did nothing with him. I'm very pissed off about that. I'm pissed for you, Musa. I love you, Musa. But yeah, man. But yeah, that's League On.